start. I'm just waiting for a few minutes to let everybody in. If you can give me a minute, we shall start shortly. Thank you. But in the meantime, for those who are in the room already, kindly complete the poll that has been put up for you. We would like to hear from you. And let's wait for a few minutes till we start officially. This is Getting Real with Entrepreneurship, Part 4. All right, I believe everyone is in. For those that are still to join us, they will catch us on the way. I'm excited, guys, about this evening. I've been looking forward towards this evening for the whole week. Actually, this week on Monday, I was starting to think about the conversation I had with our guests, whom you will get to meet shortly. And one thing, the reason why I was thinking about them. I was on a call with a call center and there was a lot of noise and I couldn't hear what they were saying. And then I realized that there's someone who has actually came up with a solution for such a problem. But anyhow, my name is Motsoaledi Mudimogale. I'm your host. And today we are going to talk about a story that is going to inspire many of you. As you know, this session is it's interview style. I'll be interviewing our guests and they'll get to share their story, how they get to be where they are and what they met on the way, the challenges and some of the, how they overcame some of the challenges that many of us are still struggling with. I mean, we are talking about a company that has started by two amazing young people. Here, guys, young people are doing such a wonderful job today and they're making the waves internationally. And we want to know, how did they get it right? And or what are they still doing to make it right? So I want to talk to you because today's topic, we are talking about solving an X with Voyc. And it's a story of evolving nation. They got from one point to the next point and they are still continually innovating their concept so that they can meet their clients' demand. They can always be innovative in their approach and be able to serve their target market. So guys, I would like you to welcome Lethabo, Motsoaledi, and Matthew Westaway. I'm going to start with Lethabo so that she can introduce herself and tell us a little bit more about the company and also what's happening in her world now. I do believe that, Lethabo, you have been in many other businesses before. So in your story of introduction, please tell us your journey, where you come from in the entrepreneurial journey and where you are at now. So welcome, Lethabo. Let me start with you. They say ladies first, Matthews. So forgive me, I'll come to you shortly.
Thanks, Lisa. But yeah, just to give everyone some context, I'm Lethabo. I'm the co-founder and CTO at Voyc. And to be unfortunately honest, my story of entrepreneurship does not, it's fully almost 100% intertwined with Matthew's. So at this point, we tag team to be like, Matthew, can you throw in the story and the journey and all our past businesses and why we got to where we are. And then yeah, and I highlight most of that. But yes, I am Lethabo. I'm the co-founder and CTO at Voyc. Before Voyc, co-founded a few other businesses that are part of our story and journey. But fortunately, Matt is here in the team or in the room with me because our story is 100% intertwined. So I'm throwing it back to Matthew to for this question on how the entrepreneurial journey looks like. Yeah.
But Lethabo, please do still tell us about you. You.
Matt's like doesn't want to answer. Yeah, okay. So just a little bit. I studied geomatics at the University of Cape Town. I'm originally from Polokwane. I had always known that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. In fact, the Alan Gray Orbis Foundation was my saving grace, because when I turned 18 years old, when I turned 16 years old, I read a book by Richard Branson, which was one of his earlier books, which is Losing My Virginity. And in that book, he's talking about how he created all the Virgin brands. But in all of it, he never mentioned entrepreneurship quite per se, but he was just solving a whole plethora of problems, and how he mentioned he built those. And I was like, whatever Richard Branson does, that's what I want to do. It's looking at problems and wanting to solve them, and not necessarily talking about a career. But unfortunately, in my context, like, that was not a good thing. And because I couldn't explain to my parents I want to be an entrepreneur. They didn't know what that was. I didn't know what it was either. But when the Alan Gray Orbis Foundation came about, talking about entrepreneurship, I said, that's exactly what I want to do. So I went to university to study engineering, knowing that one day, if a business idea came to mind, I would have the technical skills to learn how to solve it. So that's me in a nutshell. And I also enjoy sports. So I enjoy outdoor activities, but right now, because of work, don't have lots of time to dedicate to a sport. But yeah, I just enjoy outdoor activities. That's me.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you so much. And over to you, Matthews. Can you kindly let us know who you are and what inspired you to start business?
Great. Thank you, Motsoaledi. So on my side, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Voyc. My journey into entrepreneurship was slightly different to Lethabo. I didn't know that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but what I did know is that I don't want to go get a job. So I was always studying, and I was thinking, geez, like, I don't want to go work for a large corporation. And the reason was I always felt like I had more to offer than what was in my my grades or my curriculum, for example. So I always used to think that, going into the corporate world and putting forward your CV and getting assessed on 2 pages of paper, I didn't think would portray me in the best light. So I was just like saying, like, I don't want to get a job. And then fortunately at UCT I met Lethabo, and that's where we started to speak about ideas and things. And that was sort of the entry into entrepreneurship. I was also lucky to have an entrepreneur in my family with my uncle, who was like very keen to like mentor a nephew. So that's how we kind of got started. Yeah.
Lovely. It's amazing that none of you are talking about you are married, you have kids. So we assume that that is not happening right now, right?
No.
That would be very hard.
Yeah.
Kids and staff.
Kids and stuff. Yeah, it's an unfortunate truth. I do think that entrepreneurship is very difficult, and so is parenting. And kudos to all the entrepreneurs that are able to do it and be parents, because it is definitely a tough one. Yeah, so still swimming, because yes, no, not married and don't have kids.
Lovely. So your company has actually developed a speech analytics software that helps call center to monitor 100% interactions for 100 quality assurance. Just tell us a little bit more about Voyc. How did it come about? What brought that concept together? Especially because we now see it for what it is. I'm sure there's a story behind what led it to be where it is now. So take us, and maybe let me start with you, Lethabo, to tell us a little bit about how did you start the company?
This time, I'm not going to be unfair, but I'm definitely going to throw this over to Matthew, because he's got that story on lock. But Matthew, if you don't tell it properly, then I'm going to override.
So, yeah, when we were Lethabo and I were at university, this is now 2014, I was doing my master's, Lethabo was doing her undergrad in 4th year, and it was like, one night in the lab, and we shared a lab, and we were discussing, you know, a lot of experiences we've each had with large companies in terms of bad service. So Lethabo was raging about how Woolworths upped the price of their gluten-free food like 20%, which was like 3 Rand, but it really triggered her. And I was raging about how I once, you know, actually like a few weeks before then had received some cereal with like a screw in it. And I emailed checkers hoping they'll send me a carton of cereal, and they just said like, go collect another box. So we were like having these discussions, and through that we said, okay, look, all of our peers in the lab, we're going to go work for these companies. They were going to go, and like was the next step once they graduate, to go work at larger businesses. And we said, no, like let's study longer. So, and find out how we can just be students for longer and come up with cool things to do, because we don't want to go into that. We used to call it the system. So I did my master's. Lethabo enrolled for her master's, and then we built all these things, great ideas. That's where we met Denislav, I think in 2016. We were 3D printing stuff, and we had this mindset, like we can create stuff, it'll sell. We did 2 amazing products with 3D printing ultrasounds for moms. We did a Mandela Day project with an hourglass with 67 minutes of sand in it that was connected to our cell phone, and it would drop when it was phoned. We had this big, you know, grand plans for our products, and none of them took off. And when we were doing like, after that failed and we had spent loads of hours, we realized, well, we never spoke to people to ask if they would need any of this stuff. And at the same time, 2017, the D School opened at UCT, and they had this course on design thinking where you would speak to people and find out what their needs were, and then you would build something. And we're like, oh, wow, okay, let's do that course. Maybe it's an approach we should use. Did that course, learned like if you speak to people, it'll save you a lot of effort in terms of what you need to make. And after that course, we decided, okay, we're finishing university, let's start an agency and do design thinking projects for companies where we speak to their customers, we find out what they need, and we write a report. And started this agency, did a project for FMB where we interviewed some customers for them, and we had like 30 hours of recorded interviews. And we now had to find out, you know, what was the problem in all these interviews. And that's where we sat with listening to audio, playing it back, writing notes on Post-its. And we looked for something that could help us as like to streamline this. We couldn't find anything. And that's when Lethabo and I said, okay, let's write a program. So we wrote the first version of Voice then, and then realized actually this can be a product on itself. We started Voice to analyze interviews, and then we went, we were told by some people, look at the call center. We said, no, we never found the problem there, but we eventually listened to them. We went to the call center, and we found out that there was actually people that were hired to listen to these calls. And that's when we realized, wow, okay, our software can actually have a huge impact in this space. And that was the journey, like since 2016, 2015, 5 years, yeah.
Wow.
So, well, how did that do? I think I missed something.
No, you might have, but it was quite good. So just to mention, Motsoaledi, that the big idea that we stumbled on Voice technically started 6 years ago, and it kept iterating into what it is today. Kept getting feedback from customers, kept getting feedback from the market, pivoting and changing, and we finally are where we are because of the lessons we had to apply. We were forced to apply.
But how easy was it for you to actually just keep on changing the idea for what you thought it was, to actually listening to your customers and your clients advising you to say, this will work for us in this way?
I think we had 2 things working for us. The moment we made the decision that we have to go down the call center route and pivot, that was the one realization. Then the other one was just experience. So we aren't from one, we technically have never built a tech startup before. So we're not second-time tech founders. Yes, we've had businesses before, but they weren't building software and technology, which meant that we needed to really stay very close to the customer to hear what they want and build what they need. And then, but secondly, we're also not from the financial services or insurance space. Most people that build technology for banks and insurers have worked in a company for like 10, 15 years. They know exactly what the problem is. And then they kind of just leave their jobs to solve the problem as entrepreneurs. Whereas us, we were complete outsiders. And knowing that our customers and knowing that the market knows more than we do, it was a stronger, almost an easy pull to realize you have to pivot. We were strong in that we're solving a problem and we believed that we're capable of solving a problem, but we were never so set on how we thought to solve the problem was correct, which made pivoting very easy. In fact, you don't even think about it as pivoting. You think of it as, oh, here's another opportunity to expand X. And then the outside person sees it as a pivot. The way we looked at it is, oh, way larger volumes, way bigger problem, perfect solution. Let's just keep applying it and see how it works there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think it's just building on that. It's, some people think of a pivot, they think it's like, okay, scrap everything, start afresh. It's more of just repositioning. Like it's often nothing more than a day or two to work, for example, to be like, okay, cool, now we are focusing on the contact center and not doing insights. The product's the same.
Yeah, to keep on evolving. I'm not sure our guests can really, or they truly understand what you guys do. So if we want to clarify what the benefit that your clients are getting from you, can you maybe help us understand what value you are adding to your clients?
Yeah, it's always better to show versus tell, but I don't know if I have presenting right here. No, I don't. But in a nutshell, what we do is if you've called a call center before, you've pretty much heard there's a recording that says this call is being recorded for quality and training purposes. And we've heard it like almost every single call center. In fact, if you don't hear it, you should be concerned as a customer now. But the reason why that happens is because one, there is actually a quality assurance team that listens to some of those calls to pick up that if Lethabo was an agent speaking to Puseletso as a customer, did she tell Puseletso the right information? Did she get the right details? Did she confirm that she's actually speaking to Puseletso? All of those things need to happen, which is why quality assurance exists. But there's also the additional aspect of the risk that exists in those calls. So if you're talking to a bank, the transaction that's happening on that call is so important that the bank needs to make sure that the agent is giving you the right information. So quality assurance calls is becoming even way more important as a function, but companies only do at best 5%. Sometimes 1% they'll listen to, sometimes 2%, at best 5%, because they don't have as many quality assurance people as they have agents. So what that means is a lot of issues slip through the cracks. A lot of problems are left unresolved, but they just don't have the capacity to listen to everything. And so that's where voice comes across. We monitor 100% of the conversation to allow them to quality assure 100% of interaction, and they need 80% less people with our software. So with our software, we'll make sure that every interaction is treated with consistency and care. And if it wasn't treated with consistency and care, that interaction is flagged, and that's what the QA team focuses on versus listening to calls that have no issues potentially.
Thank you so much for that. That is much clearer. And you have actually relocated to Netherlands. How was it, that transition from moving from here in South Africa to Netherlands? And what are the learnings on that movement? Messi, this one is for you.
Yeah. So the moving to the Netherlands, first of all, the reason for doing it. So I mean, okay, there's there's a few reasons, but the first reason is it's quite a legal reason, but in terms of setting up your company, South Africa has exchange controls where you need permission in order to raise foreign funding or sell your business to acquirer overseas. And a lot of those restrictions mean that raising investment in South Africa is a bit harder because foreign investors aren't going to invest if they need permission if they want to sell their investment to an offshore company. So unfortunately, a lot of software businesses in South Africa do look abroad to set up their companies. So that was the one sort of legal reason, which is why we had to set up an offshore company. Why the Netherlands is, first of all, time zone. We could keep the whole team in South Africa and continue to hire in South Africa and be on the same time zone almost. So we'll always hire South Africans in South Africa, and being in the Netherlands was like same time zone. Second of all, the Netherlands is quite welcoming to startups. They gave us a visa. They really helped us set up, get the whole company up and running with as much support as possible. So that's the second reason. And then the third reason why the Netherlands, out of a lot of countries, you as a startup running your business is super hard, and you want a stable place where the currency and it's going to be stable and there's not going to be any things out of your control that can influence your business. And the Netherlands is super stable. Yeah, I mean, the problems we face in our business are only our problems. Nothing else can happen in the country that would affect us. And that's why it's a nice place. Yeah. Those are the real answers.
Yeah, those are the the real difficult things we have to consider, especially because in 2018, when we stumbled across Voyc as this is a scalable global business, we were on a Techstars program in Berlin by SAP. And we had a lot of potential investors and advisors that we met. And we just realized that the problem we were solving, we discovered it in South Africa, but it genuinely is a global problem. And it is a lot easier to be positioned as a global business and access markets. Like if you're European, it's easier to access the UK market, which is a primary market of ours, than being in South Africa to access the UK. So while there are definitely a lot of South African startups that are able to access the UK as a market, it's definitely easier if you were in the region and that kind of thing. So yeah, that was one of the other things that we've always known, that we are solving a global problem, and it's nicer to be closer or more understood by your customer base and potential acquirers. And in the Netherlands, one of our angel investors is actually a Dutch ambassador. So we weren't saying Netherlands, we were saying, oh, Europe would be cool, UK was an option, but the Netherlands is very welcoming, very understanding. Somehow the relationship between South Africa and the Netherlands is quite good. And at the time, it wasn't a deciding factor, but Brexit was happening. And what we were realizing is a lot of companies who had the UK as a core market, still have the UK as a core market, relocated to the Netherlands, still knowing they'll access the UK market. So it just seemed like a good place to be and to set up, and it was a good choice. Well, we've been here for a year and a bit, but it's been a really great experience and a good choice.
Oh, lovely. I was actually about to ask you, how did you get to understand the market there? Did you do your own research, or you got to be informed by some of the projects that you were involved in? Because I'm asking this, there could be someone who is running a business and they want to take it global, and they have yet traveled to understand how other markets work. What would you advise them?
Matt, you might have like a different answer to this, but I just want to touch on this a little bit, that when we started Voyc and we discovered the problem, we were fortunate that one of the first customers we ran a POC with was Telesure Group, One Life Insurance, selling insurance. And we discovered that insurance products have high risk in them. They're usually sold over the phone. And this this is an issue experienced by, the scale of the issue in financial services is quite high. So once we'd like, okay, what if financial services is an industry we can explore? How big is the financial services market and its customers across the globe if we're going to focus on insurance? And we found that South Africa has 400 potential customers, like in terms of customers that would use voice software. The UK has 1,100, so 1,100. Australia has 600, and America had something like 8,000. So the ideal customer we would like, this is the demographics that our research told us. And then we were like, okay, so even if we really wanted to get this right, we can learn with South Africa. We've got a very strong financial services market, but the market is a lot bigger elsewhere. So we did our research online and we kind of validated by talking to people in those markets, by looking for potential competitors in those markets, and then validating where our market really lies and how we should go after them. So it was desktop research, then followed up by conversations with people to validate our theories.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah. One of the key tools though that we use a lot is that these numbers that Lethabo was quoting are from LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So once you've identified your ideal customer profile, which for us is a financial service company with 100 contact center agents, about 300 employees, you put this stuff into LinkedIn and it'll show you, okay, in the UK, there's 1,100 of these companies. So that's a really great tool just to see, look at your ideal customer, where are they? There's also things like Google Trends as well. You can search, how many people are searching speech analytics in South Africa, and it'll tell you. And then you can see, okay, that's quite a lot compared to another country. Maybe I should look at it further. Yeah.
Have we lost Motsoaledi?
I think we've lost. But another thing which is really useful for market research is to join, or just not join, but to watch like podcasts. So if you're in whatever field you're in, podcasts or YouTube videos of influencers in those fields, generally, that's where we gain a lot of insights.
Yeah. I wonder if we should take a question from the audience, Matt, since we've lost our host.
Sipo asked, at which point did it become evident for you that what you were solving was a global problem? So, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I'll take that, and then I see Elijah has a question. But yeah, hi Sipo. Yeah, so when did we realize that it is a global market problem? Luckily, it was early on. So luckily, when we joined that Textiles Accelerator, they really the focus was not even on the technology in that 3-month process. The real focus was, what's the problem you're solving? Where can it go? Before you even delve deeper into fixating on how you're going to solve the problem with technology. So I would say in 2018, 4 months after we started, we had that answer. The first thing that our angel investors forced us to do was run pilots in various companies, like paid for POCs, to prove that these companies have those problems. And that also became something that the Textiles Accelerator program insisted that we do. Go out and talk to customers, validate how big it is, validate how many people have this issue, have a theory and go out and prove it, but don't have a theory and build something internally to solve it. And so slowly but surely, more people were like, are you looking at the call center space? Are you looking at the call center space? And we were almost blind to, we, in the beginning, weren't listening to them to be like, no, but we didn't find this problem in the call center. And we found it with analyzing interviews. And we're pretty sure that there are players in the call center space trying to solve it. And when we finally listened, I don't know when that was, it was probably like a couple of months later, we discovered that the players in the space aren't solving the problem the way the end users require. And it's, yeah, there were a lot of then, or in 2020, once we articulated our problem, we started picking up like direct competitors, and knowing the size of the direct competitors, the amounts they fundraise, we're able to further validate that, look, someone in India is doing this, someone in America is doing this, so this really is a global issue. It's not just a local, it's not just South Africa. Yeah.
Cool, thanks guys. Maybe
Hi
we can
guys.
Oh, okay. Hi, Tlolo.
Oh, hi. I just had a question real quick about, I just wanted to know how you guys, I guess, maybe I might have missed that we had some load shedding. So, excuse me guys, do your pilot. I'm interested to know how you did your pilot and how you got the buy-in of companies to let you into their systems, to actually, I guess, prove concept.
Good question. It's still a hard problem to solve.
Yeah.
You want to go first, Matt?
Sure. In our experience, in our case, you know, how it happened was, I don't think there's like one way that you can execute on and you'll get pilots. I think perseverance and just trying to contact companies, and persevering. Like, we had to get 5 pilots in 2018 to raise our first R1 million. And I mean, we just persevered and spoke to maybe, I think, over 10 companies, and we managed to get 5 pilots. So numbers game, approach quite a lot, double or triple the amount of pilots you want to get, and persevere, like follow up, just be annoying.
Yeah. And yeah, because the other thing is, why I'm saying it's a hard one is because we're solving problems, or most of us will solve problems for enterprises which don't want to deal with startups and that kind of thing. So it is about persevering and letting them know that you have this problem and I have the solution. And even if you're a 5,000 strong, 10,000 strong company, you don't have the solution and I do. So the perseverance to get your problem in front of them, like, does resolve it. And then the second part is, and you might not always know this offhand, but we know in hindsight, which is why I'm saying you won't know it offhand. In hindsight, the people that took us on for POCs when we're still very early days are actually, there's a personality type, or, you know, when they call them early adopters, they're willing to try something new. So if you enter an organization and they're trying to find out how many customers do you have, but it's very clear that we're a startup, they're already the wrong audience, because they want social evidence, they want social proof, which means they're not trying to trial with you. They're not the type of adopter that you need. And you could waste your time trying to convince someone who wants social proof to trial with you. So those are the ones that, like Matt says, the numbers game, like, pass them on, keep persisting, but find other people first. So I don't know how well I don't know if it's easy to identify if a company is in that early adopter phase trying to try new technologies, but those are the kinds that will try POCs. They typically have an innovation department. The problem is, innovation departments aren't always set up to want to continue beyond the POC. So some innovation departments are pretty much, let's try stuff, but the intention to go into production is not there. So you also might need to, like, question how big, are you talking to the right people? Yes, innovation introduced you, but the innovation department also needs to be introducing you to operations, the real people in the company experiencing the problem, so that you're not just a POC, because you want long-term contracts even after you're trying something. So there's twofold: to look for early adopters, but to make sure the intention to continue is also there.
So it looks like it's not not a science as such, but one can have some sort of like ways that you can learn around some sort of way to segment then the people that are showing some potential interest.
So a great place, I mean, we often ask where to find early adopters. So like we now, our current focus is in the UK, and we're looking for banks and insurance companies there that are innovative. And where we found is like joining groups and communities on LinkedIn. That's where we've been able to find people that are open to trying things. But finding early adopters is challenging.
Yeah,
but it's once you find them, they're looking for you. They're like keen for new solutions and stuff. Yeah.
right. I know that Elijah has been waiting for a while, and also Dennis love to ask a question. Shall I just ask Elijah to go first?
Cool, thanks. Thanks, guys. This is quite insightful. I have a few questions, but I'll start with the questions relating to the last question. How are you guys able to keep that feedback loop consistent with your customers in the early stage when you're trying to really get feedback to validate what was going on? And how did you find people who are willing to talk to you for you to be able to validate this kind of concept and the proof of concept? And then you guys said that you got a paid for proof of concept. Getting a proof of concept is quite hard enough. The fact that you got paid for is quite interesting. So if you could also just maybe unpack that, going back to the question there saying that you guys only asked 10 people but got 5 back. The laws of averages usually says that you need to, out of every 100, you're only going to get 2 yeses. So you guys might have some special magic or special anointing there that you got a 50% return rate. So if you could just let us in on the keys there, we'd appreciate that.
I'll jump on the last one, so we don't mind. And then
Go ahead.
The law of averages are completely right. It's network. So like from the 10, the 5, I think all come through warm introductions.
Yeah.
There wasn't one out of the 5 we started that it wasn't from a warm introduction. So and it was like a few of them were really pushing the limits of the network. Like someone knew someone and they connected us to that person who knew someone. But it was all through connections.
Yeah. And the first part of it, like if you don't mind asking it again.
Cool. So just saying, how did you guys keep that feedback loop consistent with your customers when you're trying to validate the early stages?
I would say that fortunately we didn't touch on this a lot, but the first 3 businesses that failed were because of the lack of doing that. So like we would like get some sort of inkling that this is what we should do. While you shouldn't doubt your instinct, your decision should not be made without talking to people that actually face the problem. And that's why I would also say that a lot of our current success and ability to just naturally get that feedback loop going is that design thinking course that we did. It was at the D School at UCT, but now design thinking, you can do it online anywhere. The whole concept there is don't build anything super, super valuable without going out to talk to someone who experiences that problem to validate that it's real and ask you to iterate. So then what we would then do is when we went to some customers, we would say, we're building something knowing that they are the ideal customer. Can you give us feedback on how we can improve it? So already the conversation to this potential customer, they're not thinking we're selling to them. Underlying, yes, we are. But what we're saying is we want your feedback. And people are more open to giving feedback because you give them this software or you show them everything you're doing with no strings attached. And then they start saying, oh, it's really cool. It needs to do this. It needs to do that, which is good feedback because they are the right customer. And then you go back and build. Or they say, this is amazing. It can already do everything I need. Where can I sign up? So you get 2 responses from the same approach of, can I get your feedback? And nobody's feeling, they don't feel inclined. And also afterwards, if they're not interested to buy, we often offer them, like, can we keep you updated for when we do have the feedback we've implemented. I know that the one key critical customer we spoke to told us that, because we were doing, yes, general conversation analytics, but we weren't doing serious compliance the way we're doing it now. Like if you call a call center, usually the agent is following a script and the QA people are actually assessing, did this agent follow the script? And this customer said to us, hey, if you could automatically determine where this script was mentioned, like I'm your customer. That's what she said. And then went back to the whole team to be like, ideal customer said this. Whatever you're doing, drop it. We're going to build this. And so we literally dropped whatever product ideas we had going to build this compliance feature. Unfortunately, that person's not a customer, but they're so, so important. They were so critical in actually directing our product in the right direction. So they didn't become a customer, but they gave us all the feedback we needed. And there was no hard feelings there because we got way more value than possibly what they would have paid us back then.
That's amazing.
Sweet,
Thank you
thanks.
for stepping in, Sipho. I've been experiencing technical problem and I'm also now load shedded, but I'm back.
Sorry.
So that we don't know load shedding, guys. Netherlands doesn't experience what we are experiencing.
That's all in order. I think there's one more question that was waiting, Puse, from Dennis Love. Maybe you can come in and then we take it forward.
Lovely. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Hi guys, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly.
Great. It's lovely to see you guys again, Lethabo and Matthew. It's been a while. So thank you for your time. My question is, certain markets in South Africa are not as developed as elsewhere in the world, which makes it a bit harder then to do your market research and to identify your kind of ideal clients and your ideal market. So my question is, do you find value in using foreign markets and analyzing those markets and then kind of extrapolating from those and seeing how it could operate in South Africa? Do you think that's an appropriate approach to do? Because bearing in mind that South Africa's socio-political and economic context is quite complex. So you can't just take a cookie cutter and do what's happening in Europe and bring it to South Africa. So do you think it is it useful to look at foreign markets and see how those relate to South Africa? And when approaching investors saying, well, this is what the markets do globally, and using that as a defense for your own market, is that an appropriate thing to do? And if not, then what would you recommend we do as a company that's trying to explore a relatively unexplored market? How would we then find our ideal market? Thank you.
Yeah, so it's a very good question. Matt, I don't know if you have anything to touch on first.
Just some experiences,
Yeah.
but I didn't have the answer you probably have.
Yeah, I'll go first, but like there's no silver bullet because I think it's a uniquely South African problem to have. So I'm going to say this knowing this is a safe space, so what I say should be articulated in the best light possible. When you're looking at Africa as a market, you've got like 52 states that are not in any way the same. And when you look at my experience is very much as an outsider, if you're a Nigerian startup and you solve a problem for Nigeria, it's almost easier to scale across the other regions in West Africa, almost. If you're in Senegal and you solve a Francophone Africa problem within Senegal, all the French-speaking countries around there almost become your market. So it's a lot bigger than just your country. And then also East Africa as well, sometimes it's the same, but it's very fragmented and difficult. The difference with South Africa is, yeah, we're not that big. We're big, but not that big. And sometimes, and South Africa is just so different. So when you're solving a first world problem in South Africa, which happens depending on the demographic you're solving for, you definitely have first world problems that you're trying to solve for. But within the same country, the majority of the population has no, like that solution you're solving for is not about to reach them anytime soon. And so I think that we would need to be very honest about which audience you are solving for and very honest whether this is a Eurocentric problem, a first world problem. Yes, in South Africa, but this is a first world problem. And this is what the rest of the first world looks like with solving this problem. Well, this is genuinely a South African third world problem. And this is the size of the market on the third world problem. If you're not honest with yourself around that, you're going to be pulling yourself in so many different directions where the reality is I'm not solving for the first world or I'm not solving for the third world. And this is where my market metrics come. To add on that, we were solving a financial services problem, call center, insurance, and so forth. The rest of Africa, does like they got skipped by traditional formal banking. So South Africa copied America, the US, whatever. We've got a very established financial services industry. The rest of Africa doesn't, which means our market, rest of Africa, completely doesn't apply. They don't buy insurance on the phone. They don't have established insurance markets the way we are looking at it. They don't have established banking. So we had to be very honest that we're solving for South Africa, specifically this piece of South Africa, but then globally, this is where the problem is identical, and being transparent and honest about that. So when when people are talking about mobile money and all of that, we're like, that is not the audience we're solving for. Definitely not. And we're not even going to go down that direction. Yeah.
It also Dennis, it also, one of the key things is like, if you're solving a South African problem and only exists in South Africa, your options in terms of funding are also different. Because venture capital, for example, you need a market that's over 10, 20 billion dollars so that the investors, can have that belief that it's possible to give them 10 times their money back, and for you to have $100 million of sales a year. If your problem is just in South Africa, then you also need to look at different type of funding, because the venture capital route is not going to be easy to get.
Or look at funds whose mandate is purely South Africa and South African problems. Like that's their mandate, so there's a value alignment there. But to try and get, that's a good point now.
I also notice, I like what you guys are doing where you're using the Netherlands as well. You're kind of bringing in international funds back into kind of South Africa by still employing people here. I think that's a great way to actually operate within South Africa, but then still kind of open to an international market, so you can draw some of those funds back to Africa. It's kind of like a reverse of Europe taking our resources. We're kind of taking Europe's resources and bringing it back here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's truly beautiful.
Great answer. Thank you.
Really,
Thank you very much. There were two questions that were in the chat. Because I got locked out, I'm going to ask Kumo to open the mic to ask it directly, because I'm not seeing it now. I know there was one from Ijesh and there's one from Kumo. Kumo, let's start with you. You had a question in the chat. I'm unable to read it because all my data is gone.
Hi, I was trying to stay incognito. Hi, everybody. The question that intrigued me is when Lethabo and Matthew were saying that they're not from the world of software developers, and neither are they in the financial services sector. Now, normally, the advice that you would get is don't go into an industry that you don't know, that you're not of and whatever. How did you actually address the lack of expertise that you had there in order to make sure, that you don't fall into the usual traps that, that sort of deficiency might have?
Yeah, cool. That's a great question. I would say that the first thing when we discovered the problem of speech analytics, Matt and I weren't software developers, but we were engineers that knew how to code. So we coded the very first version of Voyc. And once we got the POCs, realizing that this could be I guess we were entrepreneurial, because entrepreneurs will always figure out how to solve something that they're technically not qualified to solve. So we're entrepreneurial to start discovering, okay, this is something we can solve. Definitely a lot of people are trying to solve it. We've solved it. How many people have this problem? The moment we had customers on board for the POCs, we got investment in, And that's when we hired our first team member, who is a very, very skilled full stack engineer. He's here with us. We were like, we've got this piece of technology that we have built, and we need to make it scalable. It needs to access, thousands of conversations, and it needs to do this. So we got an expert, you could say, to join our team in that regard. And because we were getting the insights of the problem from the industry, what we needed to do in the earlier days was strengthen our team to solve the technical problem, because it was more of a technical problem than a industry expertise problem. And then we got one of our proudest moments was when we eventually hired who was Matt mentioned in the earlier in this conversation, that he was doing his master's and I was doing my undergrad. There was a UCT lecturer there that was advising us on a lot of the problems we were solving. And Matt's also a master's thesis, also oversaw Matthew's master's thesis. We were like, you're definitely the type of individual that knows how to solve these problems. Would you be willing to join our team? And so he joined our team, and we became better and better at solving the technical problems. So that wasn't a problem anymore. But when it comes to the industry problem, you have a point, except the reason why we succeeded is because the industry was so inside the industry that they did not see the problem and the outside way of solving it. So it was the ability to look at this problem from the outside was what actually helped us, break in and solve it. So it was an advantage more than a disadvantage in our case. Yeah.
It's because it's on that point, for example, insurance companies, the individuals that we working in the contact centers, the problems that they're seeing only occur in that context. So if they were not working, none of us outside of the contact center space will know about these problems. And once they're working in those organizations, very hard for them to quit their job and now say, I'm going to solve this and launch a business. So these problems just stay there. So if we were, for example, working in the contact center space, I don't think we would have solved it, and we would have also known the full extent of the problem, which would have meant we would not have had the naivety to try and solve it.
Yeah.
Which is a key thing, I think.
I love about that. But if someone in the early days, which is probably why when we entered it, it wasn't solved. If someone had told us the extent of the problem we were going to solve or face in the beginning, I don't think we would have.
Not a chance.
No, I don't think we would have. And then at some point we were in so deep that we couldn't turn around.
But what we have done now is we've now going to focus on financial service companies in the UK. We found an advisor there who knows the market there, who meets us every week, and she's worked in insurance and contact centers for many years. So she's helping us with how it's different to South Africa, because we know that in order to come across to our clients as credible, we have to speak their language, just in how we converse in meetings. So they have their own vocab there and stuff. That's always safe when you advise it to know what they call the ombudsman. In South Africa, a lot of our clients say the ombud. Small things like that, where we started saying ombud in the UK, and they're like, what's the ombud?
Yeah, I must say the one thing that I like from what you're saying is the whole issue of the naivety. And that is something that when you're young or inexperienced, you always there's always an advantage, not knowing that it cannot be done.
When we entered, we should have known why nobody was solving it, or why it was a difficult problem to solve. But what we said, it was I remember, I think a year ago, 2 years ago, mentioning to one of our mentors that when we started, it was almost like pulling at a weed on the driveway in the pavement. You're like, oh, look, this is a weed, it's out of place, let me just pull it out. And as you start pulling, you end up it's just, you're reaching the roots. This thing's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And at that point, we just had to keep going. So eventually we've gotten to the point where we definitely know what problems we're not going to solve. But yeah, what we've managed to solve so far, I don't think we would have if we'd known.
Wow, that's lovely. I'm interested to know, I don't know if you've already answered this question about what makes you different. What is your key differentiator in what you do? You're talking about as you are pulling, you keep on realizing that this is bigger. So have you defined your key differentiator?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Matt, you can go ahead.
Well, maybe should we take it from a sales point of view, and then maybe focus on product?
Yeah.
So on the sales side, our whole vision is that if you've got a contact center and you want to monitor your quality, you want to have a sense of how your agents are doing, what's going on inside of all these calls, then you can just go online and sign up for our software, and within 2 clicks, be up and running. So that's the world we're building for. That doesn't exist right now. There's no solution out there that you can do that with. So that's the the goal from a accessibility point of view. We want to have thousands of contact centers around the world that are just signing up online for our solution to make sure that things are going according to plan and they know the quality is. In terms of the product, we've got a few technical, like real differentiators that maybe you want to touch on those.
Yeah, and so on the differentiators there, and also why we're deciding to focus on the financial services. When people think speech analytics, they genuinely think big data. They might imagine word clouds, like this is what's being said and that kind of thing. The problem is that is like 1% of the issue. In fact, if you're trying to really be valuable to a financial services company, they don't need word clouds because they know what their calls are about. I'm a bank, everybody's calling me about payments, or everybody's calling me up. So the topics don't matter. What matters is, was every single interaction in line with the law and in line with our brand and in line with what we're supposed to promise customers? And that was the first thing. But then what we learned is, so what we needed to do is build up a script, or allow customers to put in their contacts in the script, and we would flag whenever conversation does not meet that requirement. Like this conversation, the agent didn't say the call is recorded for quality and training purposes. They didn't mention that they're working under supervision. They didn't do that. That was easy to do. But the problem with financial services is the script or the words or the questions the agent is supposed to ask depend on the customer's answers. So if we think of one example, travel insurance, if you're buying travel insurance and you are over the age of 70, the agent has to sell you a different product and also mention different disclaimers. And the problem with saying this is the script and these are the calls, any call could have gone down a different route. So what we then did was we built a dynamic way to sort of build branches where our system, or AI for the lack of a better term, would pick up the topics in the conversation, identify that this customer said they're over the age of this, or they meet that medical condition and so forth. And then the voice system would then flag it and say, the agent is meant to go down this route, and then score that call accordingly. And that problem is unique to the financial services sector, or conversations where there's inherent risk according to how the customer responds. And then no other competitor or no other player in the space seems to be doing that. So that's one thing that, again, we only discovered by really staying close to the customer and asking, are we solving your problem? Are we solving your problem? Yeah.
Oh, wow, lovely. I have Elijah. I noticed you, but before I come to you, Elijah, can I please go back to Yujesh? Yujesh, you had a question that we have not yet answered. Can you kindly open your mic and ask them directly?
Yes. Hi, good evening, everyone. Yeah, so I actually just want to talk about more more about emotional intelligence and how you've managed to navigate that whole process. So, you know, when you have a tough day, these complex problems come up, excuse my French, but when shit hits the fan, what do you do? What inspires you to keep driving forward? What do you do to support, strengthen your mental resilience, physical health? And I mean, what do you do to constantly develop this, or do you constantly develop yourself and look at opportunities that could potentially benefit you more in the future?
Lethabo, you want to take that?
Matt, I'm referring back to one of the first. It's a tough one. Man, on my side, I'm just thinking about, like, I had a bad day yesterday. In fact, this week has been tough. So I'm trying to think, what did I do this week that just made it better? I don't know. The realization at some point, and also hearing from advisors and people that it just never gets easier. The problems get harder. Was just at some point to be like, okay, you might get over this problem, but the further you progress, the complexity becomes more and the problems, they just don't end. So you need to learn. One thing I first had to learn was that the feeling of stress and anxiety is not going to disappear the moment, the lie we tell ourselves, once I reach here, everything will be fine, my anxiety is going to go away, and it doesn't. So just in the moment, like learning to just shut down the computer, go to the gym, go meet a friend, like go and do that is what we were supposed to do, but I haven't done. So I'm trying to think about what the honest answer is, and I don't know. I think what drives me, so basically what made it very difficult during lockdown is I became so engrossed in the problem, like there was nothing, you were either working or you were not working. And when you're not working, you're sleeping. So there was just work to do, which is normal for entrepreneur, but you didn't have like the breaks and that kind of thing. And yeah, I'm like rambling because I don't actually have an answer. There is no clear way. I took up gym, exercise, took up running, run really far just to like clear my mind and come back to the problem. Sometimes just shut down the device and be like, I'm in over my head today. I'm not going to be able to solve the problem and be okay with that. But what also did help, and I think a lot of other entrepreneurs might not have the benefit of, is I seldom go through a bad day or a bad week alone. I've got a co-founder, I've got Matthew, who's essentially, even if he's on the sales side and I'm on the product side, we're experiencing the same set of problems. So there's someone to explain that this is, excuse my language also, we're in a shitty position or we're in a great position. There's someone who directly understands that, versus if I had to ask my mom or my sister, like they just don't understand what you mean by having a bad day. So that's why it also helps to have a co-founder or a team that you can speak to, so you're genuinely not going through the motions by yourself.
Thank you so much. Matthew, do you want to answer how you handle pressure and stress and your emotions at times?
Yeah, so on my side, I think the one thing we do very well is we're very positive. So Lethabo and I never speak about, or try as much as possible to remove the negative speak and the worries and stuff. We always say, we're closing Holla, they're signing this week, and we speak positively. And that has been something which we started doing in the past, maybe a year, 2 years, and I think it's helped a lot. Just always speaking positively, always being upbeat in front of the team, positive. And then personally, I think I get very happy when I see like all the calls that go through our platform and seeing alerts that have been triggered and people that have been called back to be helped further. Because I can play some of those calls and I think to myself, wow, like our software like brought that call to the attention of that company and that person got a phone call back because of us. It was a really good feeling. And third thing that for me, I really focus on like to-do lists and ticking things off, crossing things off and stuff. So that is how I know whether I've had a good day, is whether I've done the things I set out to do. And so I can, and last thing, just any rejection doesn't even phase the top of myself. We're like over it within 5 minutes. Doesn't even like, we're like, oh, we won't even talk about it. Just like, forget about
did you
it.
see that email? It's fine. It's like, eventually, yeah.
Like you're working like an oiled machine. I mean, many people are struggling as partners. So how did you get this chemistry right? Because as entrepreneurs who are always having different visions that might not be aligned, how did you get your alignment? And how did you get to be working like an oiled machine as we can see it? Or is that how it is? Because what we see might not be the truth behind the scene.
I'll let Matt answer that, but I'm gonna call you out, Matt. There, you said we need to close hard out this week, and it's on record. So
It's happening tomorrow morning.
now you have to. Yeah, firstly, I wanna answer your question around what like makes us manage to work correctly. I want to touch on that. I think
just share your message to me before this call. She's like, you're really annoying me today.
Yes, I did. I was very honest. I was like, he was 5 minutes late for this call. I don't know, I'm calling you out. I'm like, where are you? You're annoying me. Please. But honesty is one of the biggest things we got out the way like very quickly. So in the first year that we started working together, we did an assessment called the Enneagram assessment. And there's lots of personality tests to do online or whatever, but we really did invest in this one. And when in our earlier like businesses, like I did not know that, well, I did, but I'm according to this Enneagram type, I'm a competitive achiever. So I'm driven by getting things done and winning at all costs is basically what I'll do. But Matt is a strict perfectionist, meaning he does not want to, it has to be done right. So speed is not that, or used to not be. Speed is not the priority, accuracy and it being correct is. And in the beginning, there was a lot of friction because I'm like, why are we taking so long at this? Let's just do it. Matt's like, it has to be right, it has to be perfect. So doing that assessment helped me understand how he thinks and helped him understand how I think. And there was no longer question marks around what could this person be thinking, what could that person be thinking, what do they mean when they say this. It removed the friction of, you know, all the fights that you would essentially have as co-founders or as colleagues, because you understand how that person thinks and you know that there's no hard feelings. So I think that really did help in the earlier days because, and we started to do that for the whole team. So that when there is someone acting a certain way, it is first premised by, this is how, these are your motivations in life. So this is how you typically act. So when you do something, I first say, I understand you before I like fight back as to what you're about to say. So that's what helps us, like, it helps us get through, like, I think a lot of potential arguments, firstly. But then secondly, because we've built such a good working relationship, honesty is like first on the table. So when Matt's done like something that I don't agree with, it's so easy to have conflict because that's when the results come about. And we've also then started like making sure that the team has conflict, because conflict, only when there's conflict do people really say what they mean. And then when people really say what they mean, can people really commit to how we're going to solve it and what we're going to do. Otherwise, you just, I'm promising I'm going to do something, but I don't agree, and then I don't do it, and then the relationship just deteriorates from there. So I would say strong understanding of self, but also then putting as much effort into having a third-party objective understanding into everyone that, and into the other person as well.
Okay. No, that's beautiful, really. Thank you so much for answering that. I'm going to go back to Elijah. Elijah, please open your mic. You had a question earlier on.
Yeah, thanks. I'll just group them together. Just who came up with the name? Just want to give props to the name. The name really syncs with what you guys are doing. So big ups on that. And then the question I had was around, okay, so there's technical and non-technical one. From a technical perspective, what you guys are doing seems like there's a lot of data coming in. That must mean you guys have like crazy amount of cloud storage, or how that storage thing works is really insane. Just wanted to find out what that process is like. And also from a security perspective, just security in general, and then now in South Africa with the Poppy Act coming into act, how have you guys maneuvered that? And the last question would then be, you guys have mentioned advisors quite a bit. That's a process I'm trying to get into now. What was the process of getting advisors on board, and how have you thought about having how many advisors do you have? Maybe I think the question I have around that is then when is it too many advisors around you to create that whole too many cooks in the kitchen kind of thing? How do you maneuver around what one advisor is saying over one advisor and that kind of dynamics? Cool, thanks. Really enjoyed this.
Again, I'll take the last one, Tubbs, and you can take the first three.
Yeah,
So,
the scaling and the scaling and the Poppy. So the one fortunate thing, again, that people who know, we were very honest about where we lacked in our skills. We'd never built scalable software before, but our one lead engineer, Jean, had, and it annoyed us a lot in the beginning why he was so focused on scale and infrastructure and DevOps and all of that kind of stuff. And it took so long. But the key learning there is, if you're going to do something, once you know what you're going to do, focus as much time and effort on doing it right. So we were like, we need to analyze interviews. Our technology needs to be strong to be able to handle this. What are the type of cloud infrastructures that would allow us to scale? We have this really big vision of having like 2,000 companies. What are the core volumes we expect? And let's do the homework to build the right type of technology once we knew what it was. So of course, if you're building that when you still don't yet know what you're solving for, you're wasting resources because you could be doing the wrong thing. So once you've iterated and you know what you need to solve, invest the time to actually build it correct the first time, and obviously allow for iteration and that kind of thing. So that was the first thing. The second thing was luck, I would say, when it comes to Poppy. What actually happened is we launched, Poppy is a very old, very, very old law, like very, very old. It kind of just sprung on a lot of people now, but it's been in the works for a very long time. But in 2018, in May of 2018, no, in September of 2018, or around about there, GDPR was going live. And we were on this Techstars program, still a very early startup, just analyzing interviews. We weren't in the financial services space yet. Everybody in Europe was talking about GDPR and processing data and it staying in Europe and where it's going. And we could not build or even talk to anyone without talking about whether we're GDPR compliant or not. And so we built our entire software around data security, where our data goes, how it flows, who touches it, who has access to our databases, where our backups are. Every single question that Poppy sort of is covering now, we could not even talk to a customer in Europe without solving that problem. So when Poppy came about, we were just like, this is great, because Poppy also has an underlying sentence that says, if you're not, or your data is not in the South African region, prove that you're applying equivalent methods or more stringent than Poppy. And GDPR is exactly that. It is an equivalent method or even more stringent because you have to stay in the region and that kind of thing. So in fact, when Poppy came this year, and we had a customer who gave us a whole Poppy questionnaire. It was a really long one. And that would have possibly taken, I'd say, like 2 months to complete. I remember doing it in 3 hours because we had all the answers. We've done it all. We just needed to articulate why what you're asking is Poppy compliant, because this is our data process. This is where it flows. This is how it works. This is what. So I say lucky because we could not start in Europe, at least, without solving the data protection question.
Thank you so much for answering that, Lethabo. We do have 2 questions that are on our chat. I'm going to read one from Megan now, and then the other.
I remember Matt had the advice one. Sorry, I went on a little bit long.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, just the Elijah on advisors. So our approach to advisors has been, we're now 3 years, 5 months in, and we've got a huge amount of our time over the years has been spent talking to advisors. Like, it's been different people. We've now, I think, got a list of close to 300 people around the world that we update every month. And I'll say every challenge we have, we'll bounce it off someone if there's an advisor I can help with. So getting advisors is just going through accelerators and programs to meet people. Where we're at this stage now is we've recently consolidated a bit. So we've now got a small team of 4 advisors that we've had relationships with since way back, just kind of like the originals, and they really know us on like a personal level, because now we're at the point where our time is becoming really, really scarce. So we can't be speaking to like a lot of new advisors and having calls with them and stuff. It's just difficult. So we've consolidated now with a team of 4. But in the beginning, we were just building networks, building relationships, keeping people up to date, having coffees, getting as many people as possible. Yeah. And they were connecting us to clients. It was just this amazing network. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We have 10 minutes left, guys. So the last 2 questions, because I don't want to go without noticing them. Please take a question each, and let's start with you, Lethabo. The first question is based on what you said earlier, and Megan is asking you. You touched a little bit of having other half of as your support structure, which is your co-founder. So would you say it's better when you are in partnership, when you're in business?
People say this. I don't think it's impossible to be a sole founder. There are sole founders that have done amazing things, but to run much further, to have a co-founder really does help, because you can't have your finger on the pulse everywhere. At some point, you're going to need to have someone that is able to handle the other part. So I do think, I don't want to say it's impossible, because there's probably a whole bunch of case studies where there are definite sole founders that have done amazing work, but it is definitely very difficult. And also, I would not advise it. I would say definitely do a lot of homework to find a co-founder or someone who, and it should just, when you're thinking about finding a co-founder, it should be someone, because remember, we met not knowing what problem we're going to eventually solve, but we aligned on having the same understanding of how the world should be. So we both believe the world should be like this. Bad customer service should not be happening. We shouldn't be working for corporates where we'll be apathetic. We shouldn't. So we had the understanding of, this is how we both believe, that we had the same values, so to say. And then eventually it just turned out that although we both studied the same engineering, although Matthew has a master's and I don't have a master's, I became more interested in the technology, and I became more interested in solving the technical problem, and Matthew became more interested in the sales. Those are 2 different things, product and sales. And if you have to do them both, one of them, you drop the ball on one of them. So you must know that you're essentially only doing one thing at a time. The one is not done when you're doing the other, unless if you have a co-founder or a founding team, because it could also be more than 2.
I like what you're saying, especially because for those who are solo, shouldn't think they're gonna have to look for partners. But what you are also mentioning is to find a good support structure and also the sounding board that you can always bounce your ideas with. So Karabo is asking, in your customer interview journey, clients may say that they have a problem and they're willing to solve it. However, have a little willingness to go into the POC. How did you plan your POC, and how did you make sure that the problem was not client specific, but the problem that affected multiple clients?
I'll start. I think the key thing to ask in that case, if a client says they have a problem but they don't want to do a POC, is why is that? You know, maybe they don't really have a problem, most likely, or there's some like maybe other blocker, maybe they're too junior, or they're busy. Time is a big thing. So the way to sort of get around is just numbers, just continuously approach different companies, and then you'll find one that will go ahead and then just double down on that type of company. That's what we did. I mean, there's still a list of people that we never actually ever went into the POC, and thinking about it now, they're such a random businesses. That's probably, it made complete sense why they didn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Karabo, are you okay with the question? Do you think it was answered?
Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. I'd just like to find out from Matthew and Lethabo, sort of how many clients did you go? Because I know you guys are a B2B client company. How many clients did you go into a POC with? So in starting, like, okay, now we are starting with a POC. How many clients did you have by then? And did you sort of fully understand the problem like you do? I guess there is some sort of improvement, but was it like quite clear? I know Lethabo indicated that, you know, it's easy to think that it's about, the problem was about like word clouds. So did you understand specifically the problem that you like solving today, going into your POC, and how many clients did you go into your POC with? Thank you. That's just a follow-up, but I'm happy with the answer.
I want to touch on that quite quickly. In the beginning, 2018, we went to a POC. We tried POCs with 5 different industries: contact center, radio, to analyze conversations on the radio. We did retail. We did customer interviews with Standard Bank. We did a lot. We did a whole lot of different POCs. And the point of the proof of concept is, will it bite? If you can't prove the concept, the POC didn't work, so move on somewhere else. That's why, you know, they also, the intention of a POC, obviously now you want them to convert, but sometimes the concept just didn't, they thought they had the problem, but it doesn't work out, and at least no hard feelings there. But once we discovered, and also from listening to advice, to go down the call center, we started working with a lot of call centers. And eventually, I mentioned earlier when Kumo asked the industry expertise question around discovering how big the problem was. At some point, you have to decide, if you have enough customers and you're doing your research on the market and the problem that you're solving, when they come at you with a problem, you have to decide, and we had to decide, how many other customers have this problem. Do your research. Oh, actually, every call center has this problem. It may not be the ones we're POCing with, but actually, you're right. The customer brings on this problem. A lot of other people have this problem. So yes, it's worth solving. And then we solve it. And then you get another problem. And then you have to validate. There's some problems that we were just like, no, that's your company specific problem. And we can't solve it because we don't have enough resources and no other customer has that problem. So it's not worth solving. But so the POC, as much as it is for the customer, it's also a POC for us to see if it will work with this customer.
Thank you for the question, Lethabo. Let me take you because of time. We have 3 minutes left. See if you have a question, and then we can close off. I'll come back to you, Matthew.
So guys, yeah, thank you for a very, very insightful session. And I made a comment at the beginning that, you know, in South African Tsotsitaal, there's a saying that U-X ongasolveki, which is like X that can't be solved. And, you know, we titled this message Solving for X, and it really talks about this journey of so many iterations. And I wanted to ask the question in this way to say, you know, as you've you know, taken this this journey in arriving at your current package and stuff, you know, how have you sort of like, you know, inculcated that spirit of you know, this continual evolving and adapting and having this growth ambition, especially as you've built the team beyond just Lethabo and Matthew? If I'm not mistaken, you guys are sitting on a complement of is it 14? Can't remember.
11, not yet 14.
Well, we're on our way to 14.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I could understand that, and also maybe just a bonus question, they'd say, so where to next? You know, and I'm talking really about saying, you know, you mentioned about the UK, you exploring that market. Where are your customers sitting, and where are you looking at some of the interesting markets that you're wanting to explore from here? Thanks, guys.
Sure, I'll touch on the last bit. One thing that's also been quite important, every year we do like annual goals, and we tie that into our 2026 plan, which is to monitor the interactions of 200,000 agents. So by the end of this year, the goal is to get to 3,000 agents, 3,000 contact center agents that we're monitoring their calls. We're now on 1,700. So that's our key metric, is number of agents. We just track that as our North Star. But in terms of markets, focus now is still on South Africa, but we've in the past 6 months been doing a lot of focus on the UK market. So there's a lot more financial service companies there, and it costs them a lot more to do quality assurance, to hire people. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And while we were here, we were also lucky because it was without trying or outreaching to get 2 Dutch contact centers. So we have 2 Dutch call centers as customers as well.
Yeah, and the first one's the Dutch government, so we're now trusted by governments.
It's our first government customer, yeah, so that's quite cool.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. You are getting a lot of compliments, guys. Karabo has just said, thank you, Lethabo, thank you, Matthew. You personally contributed so much towards your personal development. So with that note, guys, where from here? On your personal capacity, but also with the business, or what do you see happening, especially in coming into South Africa, working with South Africans and building the companies globally?
I'll touch on this. So we, you know, one of the most important things is to define our why. And once we got there, I know that we're not going to stop until we reach there. So our key goal as a company and our purpose is to make sure that every single interaction we're empowering contact centers to handle every single interaction with consistency and care. And we obviously, we did the numbers, there's quite a lot of agents out there in the world. And we think that our mission will be reached if we reach 200,000 agents. That will be around 2,000 financial services companies. And then we can be like, cool, our job is done. Until then, until that metric is reached, I don't think I'm going to stop at least. I'm going to keep, putting in the extra hours and taking those risks to go into unknown markets just to grow and all of that kind of thing. And just, putting it out there until we reach that final 200,000 agents.
Lovely. And in conclusion, as you know that Allen Gray ecosystem itself is quite a global diverse. So what would you say, especially to our fellows who are watching and listening to this conversation? Of course, there will be others who still continue listening to this conversation when it's shared on our platforms, on social media, on YouTube. But I want to hear from you because we're talking about how to evolve, how to keep on evolving and becoming better and better with your products, with your services. What would you say are the key takeaways for them and what you want to advise them to look at going from here?
Well, you can take that.
throw it back to me. I think I just answered a very critical question here. No, but I think it's an answer that I think I'm giving to myself as well, is just not to fear, because there's a lot of things that I know we would have achieved a lot earlier if we just removed the barrier of worry and the barrier of fear. And you only learn from failure that wasn't so bad, or you learn from trying that wasn't so bad. So it's advice that I'm currently applying, to just be like, a lot of uncharted territories are out there, and the fear aspect is honestly just holding you back. So just do it, and then whatever the consequences are usually good.
Thank you so much. And you, Matthew?
So is this just advice to fellows? Is that what?
Yeah.
Well, I think the key thing is just work like crazy, work crazy hours. I think there's one thing Elon Musk used to say was, Lethabo and I watched the video of him say this maybe 4 years ago, but he was like, if the average person works 40 hours a week and you work 80 hours a week, you'll achieve what they achieve in a year and 6 months. And I think early on in the early days, when you're exploring and learning, more time and is directly related to success. It's like the closest thing, the closest relation. So time, hard work. And then when you find your sweet spot, then you can focus more on balanced life.
Yeah, we all aspire for balance. So thank you so much, guys, for coming through for tonight. It was amazing. Your story is so inspiring, and Dennis has also said the story is so inspiring, and many of us are really taken by what you have shared with us. Keep growing strong, and we want to see you achieve all your goals that you have set. Our CEOs are going up, guys. Due to time, I'm not going to be able to take a hand. I don't know if Sipho, there's last message that you want to say, especially with regard to the E-Squared and the programs, and maybe the message of encouragement.
Yeah, so thank you so much for everyone making time. We were a bit crossing our fingers because of ESCOM and that, and we think that maybe a number of people were not able to join. So hopefully we'll be able to reach them by sharing this this video. But I just want to say to the Voice team, really thank you so much for really coming through and giving us the practical, the stories behind the scenes of how we can go about building, businesses that that can really solve some meaningful problems and can sort of like, have potentially the ability to reach people in so many parts of the world. I think that we all leave here with such a great takeaway, and it's our first time actually bringing a business that is a fellow, also driven and co-founded into this platform. But it's all about getting real with entrepreneurship, and we thank you that it lived up to it. Thank you very much, Motsoaledi, for a wonderful job in hosting this. Even the power issues couldn't shut you down. So that's you solving for your own eggs in this process as well. So yeah, have a good evening, everyone, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Sipho, they say you always have a backup, so my generator is up. So thank you. It was lovely having everyone. Go sleep. Dream big, guys. We can see people are dreaming big. Let's go global and let's grow our businesses. Have a lovely day and may God bless.
Okay.
Thank you, Motsoaledi. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Motsoaledi. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Bye-bye.